Morning, you're listening to bite-sized book reviews, and the book I'll be sharing about today is called Daughter of the Sword by Steve Bein. So this story is essentially a detective story set in modern-day Japan, interwoven with sections of a more adventure action-style historical fiction. The main character is a young woman called Mariko. She is the only female detective on the Tokyo police force, and this causes a lot of problems for her. She wants to work in narcotics, but during this story she's in a sort of probationary period in which she kind of has to prove herself before she can get the transfer that she wants. But she's running into a lot of problems with a lieutenant that seriously disapproves of the fact that she is a woman. So he assigns her a case that seems really unpromising related to the attempted theft of an old sword. So when she goes to meet the owner of this sword, who is a retired professor, she learns that this blade is really unusual. It has a very, very long history and is part of a set of several swords created by a master smith about 900 years ago. So what's really unusual about these swords, aside from the fact that the technique for forging them was really amazing, is that they all kind of have this story behind them of being able to affect fate. So I guess you could technically say they're magical, only it's a lot more subtle than one would typically think of a magical sword. She also learns from the professor that the attempted theft was by someone else who also possesses one of these swords, only his sword has a several centuries old curse on it where everyone who wields it eventually goes crazy. So this case becomes tangled with a series of sword-related homicides throughout Tokyo, as well as rumors of a new drug selling project. So Mariko sort of gets drawn into the story of these magical swords. So throughout the narrative, we have basically the histories of three of what I guess are generally referred to as the Inazuma Blades. So that's the name of the person who created them. You have, the cursed sword that the bad guy wields, the sword that he tried to steal from the professor, and another one, and you get bits of the sword's history from the sections set in ancient Japan, and then that gets sort of tied in with the modern day detective story. I think something I liked was I think the story does a really kind of beautiful job at weaving together the I guess more mystical storylines of the swords. It's not specifically about having a power so much as swords that sort of create a kind of story, for instance, a sword that is meant to protect, a sword that kind of drives people crazy because of their ambitions, a sword that behaves differently depending on what kind of person I guess the wielder is. And I think it ties all these different stories together in a way that I find pretty poetic. But something that I did not like very much was that this story is one of those where you get an alternating chapters, I guess, from the bad guys. Well, I wouldn't say point of view, but it's focused on the bad guy versus chapters that are focused on the main characters and stuff. And I personally don't really have any interest in reading bad guy sections, so I'll read enough of it to know what's going on, but then I end up skipping a lot of sections because they're based on villains and stuff. So I think some people might not care so much. It's just, for me, it means that there were several parts of the story that I skipped over because I just wasn't interested. In general, though, I do think it was kind of an interesting perspective, I guess, on magical artifacts, where it brings together this idea of the mythology behind them and stuff into the police investigation and into the way that criminals behave, as well as how the people who stop them fit into this story, and Marco's journey, I guess, to stop this centuries old curse, and I think that all like came together really well. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope that was helpful, and see you next time.